Hello friends, Bill Hobson here, and before we officially begin this video version of The Big Impact, I want to remind all of you that in podcast form, every episode we've ever done is available to you for free on our website at bigimpactradio.com, and we would love to have you subscribe to the audio form through Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, everywhere podcasts are found, because every Wednesday we bring a new episode of inspiration your way. Every episode has something in it that you can take away and hopefully feel encouraged, inspired, and enthused about. I know today's conversation fits that bill perfectly as we introduce you to Elijah Stacy, the author of A Small If on The Big Impact. Over the course of almost 5 years now here on The Big Impact, we have had the opportunity to introduce you to inspiring people and their stories, and today is no exception. I am so excited to kind of bring you all inside the story of Elijah Stacy and his new book, A Small If. Now, there's a lot to explain behind the title of that book. So right off the top, let me say, Elijah, welcome and thank you for spending some time with us. How are you?
I'm doing good, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to share my story with your audience and really just trying to help them, right? Because that's what I'm all about. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Now, where are you?
I'm in Southern California.
You're in Southern California, so your weather is a little bit nicer than mine here in Michigan at this time of year. And you're a young guy. How old are you?
I'm 20.
Yeah, so you're just kind of getting things started. And most 20-year-olds are looking forward to college and getting the family started and kind of launching off into the rest of life. But for Elijah, there was a diagnosis that came your way a bit ago that kind of put a speed bump in the way of some of those plans, did it not?
Sure, it made it more challenging for sure, but it also gave me a lot of purpose and meaning in life. And, there's no challenges that's going to stop me from wanting to accomplish what I want to accomplish.
Well, that challenge is Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and it's referred to as a fatal muscle wasting disease. That's not a very encouraging combination of words, right? So how old were you when you first heard that, and how long did it take you to really come to terms with what it meant?
Yeah, so I was 6 years old when I was diagnosed with the disease, and that's when my parents told me about it, but I didn't really know too much about what all the disease entails, right? But when I was 15 years old, I was attending a fundraiser for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I'm reading through this booklet, and it talks about how the disease is a muscle wasting disease and that people lose their ability to walk when they're 11 years old. And I go, okay, that's not news to me. I'm sitting here in my wheelchair reading this. Then they mentioned that people lose mobility in their arms, so they wouldn't be able to use their arms. And I'm someone that was raised by a head football coach, so I'm always throwing the football around with my dad, always shooting baskets in my wheelchair with my friends. Very active person, right? Even though I'm in a wheelchair. So that really got to me. Then I read that, okay, the disease is also fatal. Most patients pass away by the time they're 25, right? By the time they're 25. And I just remember, temporarily stop breathing and being shocked by this news. So that's the first time when I was 15 years old that I realized that, oh, wait, this disease is fatal.
There's this statement about the innocence of youth. And in some cases, when you're 6 and you get that diagnosis, probably parents are telling you, well, it just means that you're sick and we're going to have to deal with some things, but you certainly aren't going to grasp the life-changing ramifications of what that is. And when you get to 15 and you do fully understand it, you have a couple of options for directions to take. One is you could be completely devastated and kind of enter into the woe is me mindset, or you can take the path that you did, which was, all right, well, let's make the most out of however many days that the Lord's going to provide for us. What is it about your family or about your makeup that led you to choose that path, the path towards let's move forward and do some good things?
Well, I just never quit in life. When people try to tell me, you can't do this or that, it gives me motivation to do exactly that. So in the booklet, it also said that the disease is incurable, right? And I wanted to do something great at the time. I just didn't know exactly what it was. I was getting really interested in business and entrepreneurship and things like that. So when it kind of all came together, it seemed like it was my calling. So I started a nonprofit soon after, And that's just the type of people we are. We don't quit. We don't, take no for an answer. And so what's the point of being negative and sad and depressed about it when I could be happy and do something and make it better for everybody else? Why don't I use my suffering for good? Why don't I turn my evil into good? Right. So something about me is I'm a Christian, and God does this throughout the whole Bible. He takes your evil and he turns it into good. Why can't I do the same thing? Why can't God use this evil for good? And so that's how I view the situation.
Well, that's such an encouraging perspective on it all. And you're right. None of what you're going through came as a surprise to the Lord. It's not like he was distracted by unrest in the Middle East and turned around and saw Elijah and went, "Hey, well, how did this happen?" He doesn't get breaking news. And the audiences that you are being introduced to because of your challenges probably consist largely of people you might not otherwise have ever met. Right. So there are doors open for you to share your story in ways that those doors didn't even exist before.
That's exactly right. And, I talk about that a lot. Like, I think that my wheelchair symbolizes suffering, and I'm sitting on top of my wheelchair. I'm literally on top of my suffering. And I try to use this as a way to help other people, because everybody's going to suffer at some point in their life, right? They're going to face some type of adversity. And this is just bigger than a disease. This is about, showing people that you can overcome anything, right? That you could persevere no matter how hard life gets. And so every day I have an opportunity to share that. And so because of the disease, because of the situation I'm in, I'm able to get this message out to so many different people. It gives me a platform, if you will. And to me, that's great, because that's really my whole life cause. It's to minimize human suffering and propel human prosperity so that humanity can have a better quality of life. And I'm able to do that. And there's many ways to go about that. One would be raising funds to cure this disease that I have. So that's my nonprofit. Another one would be to write the book that I did so that I can help people overcome their adversity and their suffering. Doing this interview with you would be a form of minimizing human suffering, because there's somebody listening to this that is probably going through a tough time in their life, and this should help them.
I love that perspective. And at the same time, if I understand even a little bit about Duchenne muscular dystrophy, it's entirely possible that even as you and I speak right now, you're in considerable discomfort. Are you hurting right now?
No, I mean, I'm not hurting right now, but I mean, there is some pain, because you get, if you don't move your muscles as much, they're going to get tight, right? So there's some tightness in like my shoulders, or, maybe your hips or whatever, but you just got to stretch out and relieve that tension. But, that's what I would consider to be the pain, if there is a lot with this disease.
You had a decision to make. You and your family had a decision to make, I believe, back at the age of 16. So roughly a year or so after you fully grasped what was going on, that there was this idea, this concept, this belief that maybe if you could, I guess, reshape your spine, you might be able to avoid some form of surgery. Can you take us through that discussion? And if I misrepresented it, please feel free to correct me. But I think it's what led to the title of your book, A Small If.
Yeah, that's correct. So my doctor, I was going to a doctor's visit, and my spine was becoming more and more curved, scoliosis. This is typical with people with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I kind of just always kind of put it off. Oh, your back's getting more curved or whatever, the last few doctor's appointments. And I just, oh, okay, whatever, Disappointment. He said, what, at this point, your back is so curved that I'm going to have to really push for you to have the surgery. Like, we need to set that up today. He starts talking about the specific team of doctors he'll use, when we'll do it. We'll do it during the summertime to avoid the flu season. He's getting very specific, so I know he's serious. I look over to my left, my mom is crying. I see my daddy's got his head down. That's what he does when he's sad. And I'm sitting there smiling, because I'm not going to have the surgery. I'm not accepting it. And so my doctor's going back and forth. He's going over the specifics, and my parents are asking questions. And I asked my doctor, could I just tell you, no, I'm not having the surgery? It's a metal rod inserted into your back. That sucks. I don't want that. That sounds very scary to me, especially at 16. I don't want that. And he says, well, you could, but as your doctor, I got to really advocate for you to have the surgery. I said, okay, so the more talking goes on, then I say, okay, let's just say if I was able to reverse the current state of my spine, could I avoid having to get the surgery then? He says, look, I don't give you any false hope. It's basically medically impossible. I've never seen anybody do it. But because I know you, I will give you a small if. And so from that moment, went to physical therapy, really intense stuff. I worked out every day at my house. I hung a picture of my crooked spine on my wall, right? So I could see it every morning so I can get in the right mindset and focus on what I need to do. I taught myself how to cook in my wheelchair. So imagine this, you have one hand driving the wheelchair, right? It's a powered wheelchair, got the other hand holding the pan, going to the stove, cooking, I made chicken and rice and like broccoli and asparagus, like, these healthy meal prepping type of things, right? And so I did everything I could in my power to reverse the current state of my spine. And I had a ton of motivation because one, don't want it, right? That's a lot of fear. I don't want it. Don't want a metal rod on my back. Number two, when someone says, hey, I don't think you can do something, I call it rocket fuel. That's motivation. That's tons of motivation for me to go and do exactly that. And so I wanted to prove that, no, I can do this,
Was it harder than you thought it might be?
No.
Reshaping your spine didn't turn out to be that hard.
I mean, look, I went as hard and as overboard as I possibly could so that when I went back to the doctor's appointment, there would be no chance in my mind that there was nothing more I could do. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be completely satisfied that I gave this my 100% best effort. So I don't know if maybe it was harder or whatever, but I did everything I could to where we went in there and I was very, very confident that, no, my spine is definitely straighter.
Man, I love that determination. It's not commonly found these days. Let's meet the family. Let's meet the Stacy family. Tell us about mom and dad and any siblings in the family, because somehow this strong will is a gift that you have. Is it common in your family, or are you the lone wolf?
Well, I would say that. Well, like I said, my dad was a head football coach, and so being raised by I used to follow him around on the football field. So I'm raised by a football coach. So a lot of that was built into me. My mom is an amazing woman who, she's not a quitter either. So no, we're all very strong-willed. I mean, consider this. My mom took care of my brother, Max, who also had Duchenne. He passed away when he was 14 in 2019.
Oh my goodness.
Max also had Duchenne, but he had other health complications that made him confined to a bed. He was cognitively delayed. He had a feeding tube. He was severely disabled. And my mom took care of him every single day, right? That's a strong-willed woman, okay? So that's someone that is going to persevere and not let anything get in her way. And then we have my little brother, Kai, who also has Duchenne. He's 14 now. So no, we got through a lot of adversity throughout our whole lives. So no, my parents are very, very strong-willed people. And the thing that I love about my parents is they don't let us use the disability or the disease as an excuse. Never, not once. We have to be great regardless of what is thrown our way. And I love that, right? I love that. This disease, it don't matter. Wheelchair, no wheelchair, Duchenne, no Duchenne. I want to be great. I'm going to be great. And that's how my parents have always been. You're going to do the best in school. You're going to do whatever you want to do. You can do it. We're going to support you. You're going to do the best job you can at it, right? That's the type of environment that my parents fostered for us. And I love that. And something that I've been reflecting on a lot lately is that you don't get to choose your parents. You don't get to choose your parents. So that being said, I am incredibly fortunate to be blessed with the parents that I ended up with. And I'm just the luckiest person ever because of that, So that would be a little bit about my parents.
I'm curious, Elijah, as you're coming up as a teenager, now that you're 20 years old, there's often this thought that if you're confined to a wheelchair and if you're dealing with a struggle like Duchenne muscular dystrophy, that probably, Elijah never gets in trouble. He's probably got it all down pat. And at that house, it's just one big smile after another. Did 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old Elijah ever get in trouble at home?
I'm sure I got yelled at, but for sure. But for the most part, my mom always says this. It's so funny. She says, when you're 15, you went from 15 to 40 really quick.
Wow.
Right? Because, when I'm 15, I'm starting a nonprofit. I'm dealing with CEOs and doing business and all stuff like that, and And I've always been a goal-oriented person. I like to do things with purpose and meaning. I never really been a typical teenager that likes to do typical teenager stuff. I mean, I get along with everybody, I have fun with everybody, but I want to do things that have meaning and purpose in life. That's
Yeah.
where I get fun. People say, Elijah, why don't you enjoy your youth? Have fun and whatever. This is fun. This is what I like to do. I am having fun. What are you talking about?
I love it.
But being successful and winning is fun.
You're a little young for this, but for a lot of years, every Labor Day was the Jerry Lewis muscular dystrophy telethon. It would be in Vegas, and he would have all of his celebrity friends come in, and then local stations around the country would do cut-ins, and it was a big deal. It raised hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's kind of gone away. Our media landscape has changed quite a bit. And to hear of your efforts to raise funds for research and finding a cure for this is really encouraging. How is that side of it going for you? Do you have like a number in mind, or is it just whatever you can raise? And then what happens to the money that you raise?
Right. Yeah. So I would love to raise millions of dollars for this disease, or honestly, whatever it takes to cure it. And what we do with the money is we have a mission, a really clear-cut mission. We want to advance gene editing and gene therapy to complete the cure for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So what this means is we want to give money to scientists or all different types of entities that are doing this type of research, but this research in particular. And so that means if it's, a new group of scientists that need seeding money and it looks good and passes all the scientific, requirements that we have, good, we will do that. If it's a company that's more established and we think that they could use more money for whatever reason, good, we will do that. Whatever it takes to get that done, we will do. And so right now, what we're really trying to do is go wide, right? Because this is my philosophy, right? It's if you can get everybody, let's say 1 million people, for example, to just donate $15, which in a lot of places is minimum wage nowadays, right? $15. Okay, so in other words, 1 hour of their time, or perhaps a lot less than 1 hour of their time, right? Because some people will make more money per hour. And 1 million people did that. That's $15 million right there. So really, if people were just to donate, here's $15, and let me tell somebody else, we could theoretically with enough a big enough platform, we could raise $15 million in one day, right? And that would be enormous impact for the Duchenne community and this research. And so that's why I wrote this book, to help raise. I mean, I wrote the book for many reasons, right? But one of the things that I think it's going to do is help raise money for the cause, and the money for the cause is going to go towards this research. And so that's where I'm focused at with that.
So as we sit here right now and we're talking about donations and fundraising, let's give our audience a little direction. Where would you have them go for those people who would like to make a contribution?
Yeah, so they can go to destroyduchenne.org, and Duchenne is spelled Duchenne, Duchenne. So destroyduchenne.org, and you can donate there, and that would be great. We would greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, we will put the link to that in the notes here for both the video and the audio form of our conversation. Well, at some point, Elijah, you not only were working on the development of a nonprofit 501c3 organization and laying out your vision and still going through your physical therapy and all of those different things, but you decided, since you had a little extra time on your hands, I think I'll sit down and write a book. So I have a couple of questions. First, about the process, because I don't know what levels of dexterity and mobility you have. How did you write the book? Like literally physically write the book?
Yeah, I wrote it on a laptop, just typed it, like that. No cool story there. Just typed it on my laptop. Yeah.
Well, what led you to decide to put your experience onto pages that people could read?
Well, so I wanted to bring more awareness to this disease, and I thought, telling the story would be good. But as I started writing it, it evolved into a book that I was like, no, all the suffering and stuff I have, all the mindsets I have, the way I view things could really, really, really help people. And that's what's so interesting about the book. It's a memoir. It's about my life. But at the end of the first 13 chapters, I include a life lesson. And I think those lessons are going to really help people. But the stories themselves are lessons if you think about it. And I really think that these, this type of material is just going to help people overcome their adversity, become more mentally stronger, become more ambitious, become more driven, find more purpose and meaning in their life, stuff like that. And these are things that people really need. It's, especially right now, we need hope, right? And I think my story offers hope. The world has faced a lot of adversity as a whole in the last 2 years. I believe that my story can give people hope and get us right back where we need to be.
All right, you've teased us. Now you got to give us a couple of these 13 lessons that are in the book. What are your top 3 favorites?
That's so hard. That's so hard. Because I I like them all. But the ones that I think would be really beneficial to talk about would be, one is lesson 9, dichotomy of control. This lesson comes from the ancient Stoics, which says that we should take nature as it is given. We should focus on what we can't control and disregard what we cannot control. And the majority of things, though, are not in our control. And there's a key here is that we can influence things, but that doesn't mean necessarily we can control them. So there's a distinction between controlling and influencing, but that's a little bit about the lesson. It says, focus on what you can control and disregard what you cannot. And this will relieve you of a lot of stress and a lot of emotional bondage to things, and just let you really put all your effort into the things that are within your power. So that would be the economy of control. Another lesson that I think is really, really big today would be the self-image. This lesson asks, how do you view yourself? Because how you view yourself is going to relate to how you act. If you view yourself as someone that's really shy and unconfident, you're most likely going to act that way. But if you view yourself as someone that is confident, you're most likely going to act that way. And your actions is going to lead to how other people see you. When you act confident, people think you're confident. And then that leads to more positive feedback and reinforcement of that self-image that you have about yourself, that you are a confident individual, and you just keep becoming more and more confident. So you really got to ask yourself, how do I see myself? And there's other ways to change that self-image that I talk about in the book.
On that particular point, was some of that shaped by experiencing, bullying in school and that kind of thing, where you had to really know who you are and what you stand for, while the immature kids around you are picking on weak spots, the kind of a thing? I can't imagine being bullied in school with the condition that you're dealing with, but I know that's part of your book. So did that help shape that particular point?
Sure. I mean, I think that's a great point, that I always knew what I wanted, and like I said, goal orientated, and what I want out of life and who I am. So them picking on me, the way I was viewed is, if you got to pick on me or pick on somebody else, you have some problem. You're insecure around me. You're trying to project your insecurities onto me because there's something about me that you're jealous of or whatever. Because look, let's ask ourselves, does Elon Musk and really successful people, are they like actually picking on people? They might joke around here and there, but are they actually picking on people and doing stuff like that? No, they're not, right? Because successful people don't need to do that, right? When you're secure in yourself, you don't need to go pick on somebody else. So to me, that tells me there's a problem with them. So that's how I always viewed it, as, hey, there's a problem with you. Like, you know what? In some sense, this is going to sound really crazy, right? In some sense, I kind of viewed it as a compliment. If you got to pick on me, then there's something about me that you're going out of your way. You're putting your time and energy and thoughts on me. That means I'm doing something right. So I kind of viewed it as a compliment, to be honest with you.
I love that approach. It's so smart. I wish every junior high student in America could understand that point, regardless of what other challenges they're facing. You touched on this earlier. Your younger brother passed away at the age of 14. Am I understanding correctly that you have another brother that is also dealing with Duchenne?
That's correct. Yep.
So how old is that brother?
So Kai, he's my youngest brother. He's 14 as well, and he is a middle schooler. He's in 8th grade, and he has the disease as well.
So this family has had its fill of dealing with Duchenne's for sure. Mom and dad have all the experience and much more than anybody could ever want. How has all of this brought your family closer together? What challenges has it provided for being close together? This is a lot of It's a lot of effort involved around the clock on everybody's part. So what's that like? And maybe it's a question I should ask mom and dad, but what's it like as a family to go through this multiple times?
I would say that it definitely brings you closer together because you need each other to survive. And I think that's really the key point there, is that you need each other to get through it all. So you're very, very close together, relying on each other to be each other's strength, right?
Hmm.
And I think that that's what I would say, is that, when you're going through suffering together, your family's going to come together to help you get through it.
Does your younger brother share your passion, your enthusiasm for all this, or do you find yourself kind of coaching him and trying to encourage him?
No, he's very positive himself, and it's kind of a mixture of both, right? He's very positive himself and whatever, but I definitely see myself as being a leader to him, that's raising him up to view life the way I view life, to not view adversity as a bad thing, but as an opportunity to improve your character, as someone that should have a positive self-image, someone that could chase greatness despite being in a wheelchair, someone that's secure in themselves and not insecure and letting people's insecurities be projected on them. I'm raising him to be like that.
Hmm. I haven't asked you this yet, and it's a delicate question, but you mentioned earlier that you're a follower of Christ, and that's one of the things we love celebrating here on The Big Impact, is the power that Christ can make in anyone's life. Some of you have come to this podcast to listen today without a foundation of faith. We're glad to have you. We're glad that you're listening. You may have downloaded this or looked up the video on YouTube because you saw Elijah's name, or you saw Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and perhaps that's a part of your family story. Whatever the connection point was, we're glad you're here. I want you to hear that. And at the same time, Elijah, you can speak to this. I have a firm belief that if it wasn't for your confidence in Christ, your approach to all of this would be vastly different. Can you speak to how that saving knowledge of Jesus Christ has helped you through some really difficult and sometimes probably dark times?
Yes, absolutely. So when you believe in Jesus, right, God, right, we all have a God shaped hole in our hearts that only God can fill, right? That's because it's a God shaped hole, right? And the Bible talks about this over and over again. It's a supernatural thing that God gives us, right? That fulfillment, that joy, right? That's different than happiness. And you can be sad and joyful at the same time. And people say, well, that makes no sense. It does make sense, because it's not happiness. It's different. It's a biblical concept. But we definitely have that because God provides it for us. The Bible says, for example, that I believe it's Philippians 4:13. It says that, you basically go out to God and he will give you peace that transcends a human understanding, right? He can take away your anxiety, stuff like that. It's just supernatural. It's what it is. And so following God has done that, but also the way the Bible talks about suffering. I think it's incredible that the Son of God would come down to suffer for us. That tells me that suffering is a very, very unique thing about humanity that God knows and wants to take part in, to get closer to us and to show us how we ought to deal with it. And we see it throughout the whole thing. We see Paul, he pleaded with the Lord 3 times. There was a thorn in his flesh, and he pleaded with the Lord, heal me, take this away from me. But God says, my grace is sufficient for you. My power works best in weakness. And I relate to that because, like he says, when I am weak, I am strong. So I'm physically weak, but I am very strong when it comes to my character and mindset. And, that's going to allow me to do more for Jesus. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. I mean, if we're going to be honest, philosophically speaking, nothing matters. There's no meaning to anything at all if God does not exist. And in the Bible supports this. If you read the book of Ecclesiastes, we have Solomon. Solomon, very powerful guy. He has 1,000 women. He has tons of money. He has super wisdom, and he's got it all. And he still feels empty, but then he concludes that God is all that matters at the end of the day. God is the one that can satisfy his soul. And I think that's the conclusion. And I think that's the answer. I told you today, my whole thing's about minimizing human suffering. And what I realized today is the answer to do that is the Bible. It's the gospel. It's the good news. It is God. It is Jesus. That's what people need to hear. And if they were to do that, I think they'd be a lot better off in life. I'll say one last point. How is it that we have the most successful, most famous, rich, powerful people in the world? They have it all, right? They have all that the world has to offer. And they're still searching and they still feel empty. But then we have the poorest people in the world that have absolutely nothing, but they have God. They have God. They have Jesus. And they are the most joyful people in the world. How is that possible? That's what I would ask the listener today.
Yeah, it's a very good question. There are so many instances where Solomon is yelling out, meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. It's all chasing after the wind. There is nothing new under the sun. And it's just such powerful passages where the wealthiest man in the history of the world is saying, this isn't what it's all about. And I'm so glad to hear you put it the way that you did. So Elijah, you mentioned this earlier. There's a general school of thought in the medical community that those with Duchenne live until about the age of 25 or so. Your brother passed at 14. Some have probably lasted longer. None of us knows. I don't know if I'm going to finish this interview, right? None of us knows. We are only here as long as the Lord has appointed us to be here. Having said that, are you afraid of dying?
No.
Are you afraid of what this disease can do to you and ultimately losing your life?
No.
Why not?
Well, because like you said, God appoints when you die. And so I believe that when God wants me to die, when he's done using me for his purposes, I may add, then he will take me. So if this interview is the last thing that God wants me to do, say, okay, good job, Elijah. I needed you to give this message to reach someone today and they'll come to salvation because of it. Good. And then he'll take me. And now I can dwell with God. The Bible says, to live is Christ, to die is gain. And that's exactly right. And so if I die, I die. If I don't die, then I'm going to keep using my time here to make impact and make the world a better place, help people with their suffering, help people become a more fulfilled person and help them create more impact in life. Right. And so I don't fear death because I'm very confident in my beliefs in God. I went down when I was 11 years old, I started really asking, okay, why is God real? Right. I approach it from an intellectual point of view. So I'm really into apologetics and the philosophy of God. So I've looked at all the alternatives. I've looked at other belief systems and I concluded, and hey, I'm still willing to have a conversation with someone that disagrees. This is why I believe in God. And if someone wants to challenge that, you're going to have to answer all my objections. And what I realize is it's easier to believe that God exists and that the Bible is true than to deny it's not. In apologetics, we would say that you're raising the intellectual price tag to not be a believer of Christ. And it's very expensive. It's too, the things that you have to believe, not to believe in God, I don't think they're likely to be true, to be honest with you. And I can go into those if you're interested, but because of that, that's why I have such great confidence that I know what's going to happen to me when I pass away.
I think I'm getting an idea of what your next book might be about. It might be the apologetics approach to the story of not only Elijah, but of your walk in faith. I think you've got a pretty good starting point with what you shared in the last 2 minutes. And I can only imagine how much more you have to get out and to share. The nonprofit organization is called Destroy Duchenne, and we'll put the link to that both in the podcast notes for those of you listening in audio form and for those of you watching us on YouTube. Destroy Duchenne, Duchenne, and that's where you can go to donate to help Elijah in his efforts to defeat this disease. And to get more information about Elijah, it's ElijahStacy.com, and we'll put that link out there as well. So Elijah, you've encouraged me greatly. I love your energy. I love your passion. I love your refusal to be defeated. I just had a friend yesterday, a longtime friend, pass away from cancer. He's a pastor. We FaceTimed with him last week, and we knew it was going to be the last time, even though at the end he said, let's do this again in a couple of weeks. And with hospice in the house, we were fairly certain that would not be the case. And our friend Jerry never gave in. And at the end, when he passed, I was so thankful to see that people who were posting things about him never said and haven't yet said that he lost his battle with cancer, because he didn't. I think he won his battle with cancer because it no longer has any sort of grip over him. And if for believers and followers of Christ, you believe that he's in glory with a new body, there's, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine the freedom and the awesomeness of that up there. And whenever anybody asks me about the time I talked to that guy, Elijah Stacy, I'm going to say, this guy's not losing his battle with Duchenne's. He's winning it. And like you said earlier, he's sitting on top of it instead of being conquered by it. So thank you for the encouragement. What a pleasure to meet you. And we wish you all the best with not only the book, but with all of your efforts and projects.
Well, thank you so much. It's honestly been great to have this conversation with you. And I'm just honored to, and honestly, I get so much fulfillment being able to talk about God. So thank you for letting me share my belief about God. So I appreciate that. And just thank you for your time, and thank you for having me on your show.